There's a portrait of Thomas Jefferson in there without his white wig and all his makeup. He actually had red hair and freckles. He was our only president to have freckles and one of only 4 with red hair. On the left, see this little garden right here? This was a ladies' tea garden where they would sit and wait while the men did banking. Women were seen as a distraction back then and not necessary for banking, so they had their little area. So the way things are going on, most of the women do the banking, and I'd love my own tea garden to sit in.
60%.
It's actually, yeah. That's a fact.
Why were the people
smaller? Men do banking, so it shows how much they knew back then.
Why were the people smaller? Why were the people smaller back then?
It was just hype. Do you know what? I actually don't
The
know
middle,
that.
yeah. The middle class, the most of the short people you hear about were middle class people. And the reason they were so much smaller is because they were actually getting lead poisoning. The very upper class, the very wealthy, they ate off of china and silver. And the very poor ate off of wood. So they were reasonably well sized. Unfortunately, you don't see a lot of portraits of them. However, people who were coming up in society who wanted to be seen as important but weren't yet important yet, they wanted to eat off of metal like the wealthy. And unfortunately for them, lead was a very cheap metal at the time, so that's what they ended up eating off of. They gave themselves shortened lifespans and stunted their growth through lead poisoning.
Just real quick before we pass it, the building back there on the left, the first of the 2, that was our first Pentagon. That's where the American Army was founded. Started with about $2,000 for our original army, and this building right here is Carpenter's Hall. That's where such phrases as taxation without representation is tyranny started. They started writing the Olive Branch petitions there, which was sent to King George. Unfortunately, he never read them, and they said, if you don't stop these taxations, we're going to fight back. So he didn't listen, and luckily for us, that kind of happened. On the left here, we have the original Dock Street. It was known as Dock Creek originally. Creek actually still runs underneath it, but it actually caused the yellow fever, and a lot of mosquitoes back then carried it. And speaking of which, on the left up here, we had the house there